Hey everyone, welcome to Grand Bahama Island. I'm on the East End District today, and I'm at a place that some of the locals refer to as a shark nursery. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that's technically true or not, but out of all the places I snorkel on the island, this is the spot that I see the most sharks. The thing about most shark videos that I see is that people have had to bait the sharks to approach them. So you're seeing the sharks show up in big numbers and kind of swimming aggressively. That's not what they really behave like. Today I'm hoping to show you what they're like as they naturally behave. Now, why is this place maybe considered a shark nursery versus the miles and miles of shoreline that isn't? This is a special place. Not too far offshore is a blue hole, and a blue hole is an opening to an underwater cave system, and it attracts a lot of fish. This particular blue hole I've named the cubera blue hole. That's just my name, and the reason why is I've seen some really big cuberas here. So hopefully we'll see some sharks. I almost always see sharks here, but if not, this blue hole is an amazing place, and I'm excited to show you that as well.
For starters, let me say, swim with sharks at your own risk. I'll be sharing a few safety tips in this video, and I'll also include some statistics that put the danger of shark attacks in a proper perspective. But make no mistake, they are still a hazard that must be considered by anyone who enters the ocean. I'll get to some safety tips in a bit, but right off the bat, I spotted this lemon shark taking a siesta in about 5 feet of water. To get close to it, I had to swim as slowly and as quietly as possible. Lemon sharks are easy to identify thanks to their second dorsal fin. It's nearly the same size as the first. That's a key feature since all other requiem sharks in the western North Atlantic have a much smaller second dorsal fin. Other clues include the bluntly rounded snout and the yellowish tint to its skin. As it swims away, also notice how the anal fins are almost as large as the pelvic fins. I followed this one for a while. At one point, it swam back in my direction, but after spotting me again, it looped around to avoid me. As I continued toward the blue hole, I came across a stingray that had lost most of its tail. Fortunately, that's not a big deal. Stingray tails are a bit like fingernails in that they never stop growing. So this one should grow back just fine. Several hundred yards offshore, I came upon one of the many trees that were blown into the ocean by Hurricane Dorian in 2019. There are 3 Acanthurus species that occur in these waters, but the only one that goes through a yellow color phase is the juvenile blue tang. To reach the cubera blue hole, I have to cross wide meadows of turtle grass. Even though the water is shallow, I often see sharks here. Sure enough, a small shark appeared, only to decide that it wanted nothing to do with me. It was right around this spot where I first encountered a requiem shark. I was photographing a stingray digging in the sand for food, a behavior I've since learned can attract sharks. When I looked up, a shark was already swimming towards me. Then it gave me a look, turned around, and swam away. I spent a lot of time trying to identify this shark from these photos. Its average-looking features make it tricky to distinguish from other requiem sharks in the western North Atlantic. Here's what stood out: a chevron-shaped band along its side, the first dorsal fin beginning right where the pectoral fin ends, tapered pectoral fins, an angular apex on the first dorsal fin, black pigmentation on most fin tips, and a moderately rounded snout. One of the first steps in using a dichotomous key to identify a shark is checking for a narrow crease of skin called an interdorsal ridge between the two dorsal fins. I couldn't see one in this photo, but I wasn't confident I could make it out through underwater photography. So I decided to investigate both possibilities, with and without an interdorsal ridge. Without a ridge, the two best candidates were spinner and blacktip sharks. But spinner sharks have a first dorsal fin that starts behind the end of the pectoral fin, which didn't match. That made blacktip shark the most likely candidate, assuming no ridge. But to be thorough, I also looked into species with an interdorsal ridge, and that yielded 3 possibilities. But I quickly ruled out dusky sharks, which are pelagic and unlikely to be this close to shore, and Galapagos sharks, which prefer oceanic islands like Bermuda and are rarely seen along continental coasts. Since Grand Bahama is only 64 miles from Florida, it's unlikely to be a Galapagos. That left only the Caribbean reef shark. Over the years, I've captured other shark encounters in this area, and they've all looked the same, with no obvious interdorsal ridge visible in the footage. Next, I turned to iNaturalist and reviewed research-grade photos of each species. After careful comparison, I concluded the blacktip shark was the best match. Caribbean reef sharks tend to have a slightly blunter snout and a dorsal fin that's not quite as tall. So I feel confident that the sharks I've been seeing here are blacktip sharks. I'd also like to point out the consistent behavior across all these encounters. The shark checks me out, and then, this is pretty much the theme here, it decides to keep its distance from me. And that brings me to my number 1 safety tip. Swim in clear, high-visibility water. The better a shark can see you, the more easily it can decide not to approach. In murky water, I've had sharks get much closer before realizing I'm something to avoid. As I continue on my way to the Cubera blue hole, I came upon this smaller hole. The fish with the yellow tails are yellowtail snapper, and the blue ones are blue tang adults. Another type of fish that emerged from the hole to gawk at me was this black grouper. Black groupers can be distinguished from other groupers by their almost rectangular black blotches, although these markings can pale or darken until they are barely noticeable. Not far from the hole was another tree where I observed several more black grouper hiding out. Next, I came upon a stingray digging in the sand for food, which, as I've learned, is basically like ringing a dinner bell for sharks. A stingray's mouth is located on the underside of its head, and it uses electric sensors to locate prey buried beneath the sand. Its diet includes a variety of shrimp, crabs, and other crustaceans. Something spooked this one. It suddenly stopped digging and swam off. And sure enough, a lemon shark appeared. Followed closely by a blacktip shark lurking nearby. That brings me to more shark safety tips. Avoid wearing anything shiny in the water like jewelry. Reflected light can resemble the flash of fish scales, and you definitely don't want to be mistaken for a fish. Also, try and stay out of the water at dawn and dusk, because that's when many sharks are most active and feeding. Well, so far this has been a successful swim. We've seen a few sharks, and now we've reached the Cubera blue hole. Once again, what I want to do here is approach very slowly and quietly, because it's been my experience that the big fish will reveal themselves to me only once to get a look at me before returning to the depths. The largest cubera on this visit emerges here on the right side of the frame. Keep your eye on it and the fish in the foreground to get a sense of its size. Freezing here, and keeping in mind that the small one is still in the foreground, I would estimate the larger one is about 4 times the size of the smaller one. As I unpause, the large one returns to the depths, but the smaller one turns back and approaches me, which gives us a closer look to estimate its size. I would say all these fish are at least 20 inches and might be as long as 24 inches. Here is a length to weight estimator I found for the Pacific cubera snapper, which has a very similar body plan. Based on a length of 21 inches, let's go ahead and estimate the weight of these fish at 5 pounds. Earlier, we estimated the larger one as 4 times this size, which would put it at 20 pounds. So why all the math, you may ask? Well, cubera snapper and gray snapper look nearly identical to each other when they are the same size. But the world record gray snapper is only 18 pounds, whereas the world record cubera is 124 pounds. By estimating the larger fish we saw earlier at 20 pounds, it pretty much confirms it's a cubera, since the grays don't get that big. Here again are some yellowtail snapper. I want to share another old video from the same vantage point of a snapper that was so large it could have only been a cubera. The surefire way to distinguish between cuberas and grays that are the same size is to examine the shape of the tooth patch on their upper jaw. I'm obviously not going to be able to do this, and so I'll have to look for more subtle differences. The cubera is said to have more robust features than the gray, including a thicker lip bone and teeth that are larger and more widely spaced. Freezing on this fish with its mouth open, we can see that it does have a thick lip bone and large, widely spaced teeth. Given these subtle features alongside the maximum size for each species, I'm convinced that all the fish we're seeing here are cuberas and not grays. One other species of snapper that occurs here is the colorful mutton snapper. This one has turned itself into a pale color to match the sandy background. Mutton snapper have a more compressed body than cuberas, and they can also get pretty big. The world record is 30 pounds. By the way, the black striped fish we've been seeing in the background is an Atlantic spadefish. Spadefish have a similar body plan to angelfish, but they are not closely related to them. Well, to mark the arrival of another blacktip shark, let's take a moment for some perspective. Statistically speaking, you are more likely to die from a bear attack, a dog attack, or even a lightning strike than a shark attack. I'm not saying that sharks aren't a hazard, but the fact that every single shark incident makes headlines, it tends to skew our perception of what the actual risk is. Well, it's time to begin my swim back to shore. As I pass another tree, there's a lionfish displaying its wide fan of projecting spines. This fish is an invasive species in the Western Atlantic, and they are a big problem. I'll go ahead and wrap up this video by identifying a few more animals I pass on my way back to shore.